Today, I'm going to show you how to use Fusion 360's sheet metal environment to model a large-scale leatherworking pattern. Alright, so the other day I was playing around with modeling this Explorer bag, and I wanted to make one that was a little bit more of a backpacking backpack than a laptop case. So I thought I'd just kind of let you guys watch me go through the process. This is going to be a little bit less of a tutorial and a little bit more of just a watch and learn kind of demonstration. But I thought it might be fun for some of you guys who are getting a little bit more advanced with your modeling to just kind of check out what I'm working on. So hopefully you enjoy this. Here we go. All right. So the first thing that I usually do is start in the sheet metal environment, and in this case I'm actually going to start by creating an offset plane. This is going to establish the width of my bag. I want it to be a 13-inch wide bag, so I'm going to say 13 divided by 2 right there in the menu. Create a sketch. I'm going to do it right there. And a rectangle, center point. It's going to be a nice big backpacking backpack. And, I might alter the design later. But right now, I would like it to be 8 tab 23. There we go. So that's my first piece. And I'm going to go ahead and create the other pieces right here. While I'm at it, I'm going to offset that 0.1, the thickness that I'm working with. And I'm going to repeat that again. Oh yeah. Select the first one. Deselect that top line. There we go. And move that out twice the thickness. There we go. And that should be all we need to get our first 3 components started. I'm going to hit Finish Sketch. And now I'm actually going to create a component. So while I'm in my main body, click Component, create a flange from that right there. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to start creating some flanges off of there. Right. And like that to go about 0.4, I think. And I can always change that later. That's our first piece. New component. Let's go ahead and start labeling these. Call it side. And this is going to be the brace. So I'm going to turn back on that sketch. Select that one. And I'm going to come back. Looks like 0.3 there. And to make it two-sided. And grab that other one. I'm going to come forward about a 1/2 inch. And that's going to kind of give it some structuring. Last thing I need to check is make sure it's lining up. And side 2. There we go. Now we got our pieces coming together. Let's go ahead and create another component. This one going to be main. It's going to be like the main component on here. And that's that outside line. There we go. I'm going to do that as a two-sided extrusion as well. That should be 0.4, 0.5, that's right. 0.5. And then this one is actually going to come back past my middle point. So, you know, I'm going to actually make it like it would be 6.5. I'm going to make it like 6.7. Just for visual purposes while I'm modeling. Alright, so now let's shut off that sketch and take a look at what it looks like. And we've got a nice stitchable spot there and a stitchable spot there. Oh, forgot to do the outside edge. Don't hit back, don't redo it. Double click on that flange. Just switch sides. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to start putting some stitch holes in here. And I'm going to shut the main body off because I want to stitch through, you know, just this portion right here. So I'm going to go activate just the brace, put a sketch. I'm going to put it on that surface. Circle. And start dimensioning. D for dimension. 0.05 for a stitch hole. However far from the edge you like, I just like it to be half the distance of my spacing. There we go. So I've got myself a spot where I can E for extrude. Click, and cut through that sucker right there. There we go. So that sliced through both pieces. So now I need to start creating my pattern along path. So create pattern, pattern on path, select your piece, select your path. You want it to be a spacing, and it's going to be a ton of them. I have no idea how many. Path direction, and come around to the other side and see how you're. I'm going to have to select a different path. Let's make sure I get that one right there. That looks much better. There we go. Come up here and check my spacing on the top. One more. And I could check through it by setting my visual style to show hidden edges. And now I can see that I got that one. That's lucky that I got to do that one like that. Alright, so 216 stitches later, we've got ourselves our first set of stitches. Let's go ahead and put them in that side piece now. So create pattern on path. Grab the original surface, select the path, I want to make sure I get the right one this time. There we go. Perfect. Pattern on path direction. Extent to spacing, distance 2.5, number 216, and well, that just takes care of itself. So there we go. I'm going to shut that visual style back off to visible edges only. And we've got our stitched piece. So there's always a few little abnormalities along the way, like the way it goes through the corners of stuff, but just worry about that later after you've actually output the pattern, because you can change that in your PDF. So let's go ahead and put the stitching through our outside piece now. Create a sketch, circle, dimension it, and you're probably going to want to play with your stitch size. That's just the needle I use. Measure your forks. Can be a good way to get the stitch spacing you're used to. Alright, there's my hole. E for extrude. Click on that thing. I'm just going to drag it through. I could say, distance to right there or whatever, but I'm just tearing this out, so I'm happy with just doing it like that. Create a pattern on path. Right there. Select the path. Make sure I get a good constant one here. There we go. Extent to spacing. And the direction we're wanting it to go. Start with the same number we had. And see how we're looking. So it's a larger radius, so we're going to be coming out further. But that doesn't mean it's not going to line up pretty close. And that's where I'm going to come to this side view here and turn back on that hidden edge so I can see where that is. And I can decide whether I want one more stitch and drag it down to it, or one less stitch and drag it up to it. And in this case, I'm going to opt for one less stitch. I'm going to hit extent, and I'm going to drag that piece up until it's lined up. Pretty close. And there we go. And now I've got what is pretty close to a 1/4 inch spacing across the whole thing. Let the computer process, hope for the best. If you're working on an older machine, be patient with it. All right, let's take a look at what we've got so far. And now let's do the ones on the main brace. Create pattern on path. There we go. So now we've got our stitches for the piece on the outside edge and the piece on there. Now, I've seen a lot of you guys putting together bags like that. I really like that style because it makes it easy to stitch together. So now let's go ahead and create a pocket on here. So I'm going to create a whole new component, and I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to do that right on the surface of the bag there. I'm going to use a center point rectangle. And I want this pocket to be 6 wide and 6 high. You know, now that I look at it being 6 wide, I think I want it more like 5 wide. There we go. That looks better. And make that about 2 inches from the bottom. All right, so this is going to be like the beginning of my pattern. So I think I'm going to start by you could either create the border piece or the front, and I think I'm going to create the border piece just because it's easier to work kind of from the bottom up, so to speak. So I'm going to create that flange. And if you want, you can be working up here in the, with seeing everything else. I want those pockets to come out 3. So I'm just going to enter exactly 3. There we go. And I'm going to come back. Don't go into the other environment. Do stay in your component. It's going to try and create a body in the other thing. That's totally worthless. It's nice to look at it, but stick in this one component. You can come back up here. That was interesting to see it. As soon as I clicked it, it put it in the other component. So let's keep creating some flanges here. I like to do this one as a piece coming outward. About 0.4 or so, like that. Come up to the top view to make sure that you've got an appropriate inside, outside. This time the inside's just perfect. I'm going to make that 0.4. There we go. So now we've got like a lip. You see it mitered this. That obviously isn't going to fold out in real life, so I'm going to come back here and double click and deselect mitered edge. There we go. I'm happy with the way that looks. And another flange. Let's do the inside piece where I'm going to attach the face of the pocket to. I like to just have like a sew-on face. And let's bring that in 0.4 as well. There we go, and that one can be mitered because you're actually gonna sew the piece on there. So new component, so it'll be up here. Create that new component out of the appropriate material, and sketch this time on that main surface. And I'm gonna go ahead and show none of this other stuff. P for project, so that I can project some of this geometry around here. I'm going to grab like that point there, and looks like that point there. That should be all I need. Hit OK. Grab a rectangle from that point there down to that point there. And this one's going to have a stitch in it, So I'm going to go ahead and create that here. D for dimension. All right, there we go. We've got a sketch of an outside face with some holes in it, and I'm going to leave and do those chamfers afterwards, I think. Finish sketch, create flange, make sure you select both of your pieces there, and now we've got ourselves a body. Now, I don't want that to come to a square edge like that, so I'm going to go ahead and modify and round those over. There we go. So I've got my face rounded over, and we can kind of look at what the rest of the project looks like. Now we've got a half of a bag with a pocket on the side. So I'm going to go ahead and do those stitches in fast motion here because I'm pretty sure you guys already have the creating a stitch thing down. All right, there we go. We've got the stitch pattern on the front. And if for some reason you wanted the spacing different here, you could do it as a 2 rectangular patterns. I did another video just basically dedicated to that. So now I'm going to go ahead and switch bodies and start cutting through this next one. All right, there we go. Now we've got the stitch spacing through both pieces there. Oh, there's that one little one right there. I think I'm going to go ahead and change that. Just deselect. It has to reprocess. There we go. I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to do one along this outside edge of the main body. Alright, so I was having a little bit of trouble getting that path to carry around there. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to that, that component. And here's the sketch that I created it on. And I'm going to go ahead and create a path to actually follow along. So I think I'm going to project this outside line. There we go. That way I've got an actual line to follow along. Alright, so that worked with getting the stitches around the outside edge, but I want to make sure that it's the right distance from the top, so I'm actually going to come back here to this sketch, and I'm going to mirror a version of this circle across the center, so that I've got something just to look at when I create that pattern. I've got to let it process again. So you see, now I can see where my stitch should actually line up to. And so I'm just going to come back into this, extent, and put that right where I want it. Let the computer process, and with any luck, we'll have some holes to line up. There we go. Yeah, that looks nice and clean. So, on surfaces like this, you could definitely do a rectangular pattern. That way you can ensure that these line up the way you want them. But, if you're not picky, just come in here and deselect the ones you don't like. But yeah, for that one, I think I'd use rectangular pattern. And, I can always change that later, the way that I do the pattern. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and keep rolling with this one. So now I need to create one last stitch pattern along the main body. All right, so that's a pretty good start to this bag here. We've got a pocket coming off of the side, and the pocket itself is, it has a stitch pattern to attach it, a piece that's gonna work as the main and the front. We've got a nice side panel and part that attaches it. So I think I'm going to call that a tutorial for now, and I'm gonna take a quick break and I'll do number 2, where I'm gonna mirror this across to the other side, copy the other components to the other side, and start to generate the rest of the pattern. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you feel like it, subscribe so you can get notifications for my future posts. If you've got any questions about what I covered in this episode, feel free to ask them in the comments section and I'll do my best to answer them as best I can. So, until next time, as always, stay creative.